Hey, and Tags, it's Coach Mora here. You guys are killing it in your homework on your Strava app and your Train Heroic. We're going to check in here, though, with our program director, Ryan Morrissey of Athletic Development, and just sort of see where we are. And hopefully he can keep us on the right track. So, Coach Ryan, when you're creating the daily workouts, what's going on in your mind when you come up with the training protocol for the day?
Well, when we create the daily workouts, it's not from scratch because we look at long-term development and then we work ourselves backwards from that to hit stepping stones or short-term goals to make sure that the girls are ready for season. And obviously, with a lot up in the air right now, we've changed direction on the fly and trying to pivot to make sure everybody's in-season shape whenever that in-season starts. So, starting big picture when we started with our Train Heroic platform and started with our education and layout of strength and conditioning months ago, the first thing we need to work on, and really two things at the same time, one is injury prevention. So we need our athletes to understand proper movement. We need to understand joint alignment, and we need to be successful, having stable joints, having the small muscles that we don't really think about functioning so that when it's time to push heavy weight, do plyometrics, or do some bigger, more complex exercises, the body's in a position to handle that load. So exercise is just an adaptation to load, and that load comes with an increase in volume, an increase in duration, increase in intensity, increase in weight. So whatever those metrics are that we're changing long term is a stressor on the body. And if we don't do it in a step-by-step approach long term, then those stressors give us a negative response, right? That's when we get overuse injuries. We get the chronic aches and pains, or we set ourselves up for on-field acute injuries. So months ago, our goal was, again, joint integrity, alignment, stabilization, balance, core awareness and posture, and all those things that are not that fun to train, but critical for long-term development. And then as that's happening, on the other side of it, the conditioning side, we know that women's lacrosse in most positions is way more aerobic dominant than men's. So the ladies need to run a lot longer on the field without a sub, and we need to make sure that we have that aerobic component built up. And the physiology changes favorably long term when the aerobic base or volume is built first, which takes months. After that, we layer in the higher intensity work that's, maybe short term more painful, but a little more fun to do, like track intervals and shuttles and sprints and things like that. So if we missed out, and speaking from experience, I thought I knew it all when I was younger as well. If we miss out on the early off season, slow jogs around the neighborhood and those runs that we started out at 20 minutes and built up to 35 and 40 at conversation pace, then our aerobic base was never built. So now if we're trying to get into high intensity, again, shuttle runs, sprint repeats, intervals, and so on, the recovery from set to set is going to be slow. So if there's a 1 minute rest or a 2 minute rest, you're not going to feel as recovered in that 1 or 2 minutes as you would if you did your aerobic base training earlier. Your recovery from day to day is going to be slower. And if you throw the body and the muscles and the tendons in a position where there's a big load and we haven't prepped for that slowly, that's where some aches and pains crop up. So when we talk about day-to-day daily routine, it's just been a long timeline of progressions. So we did our early aerobic training, we did our off-season, stabilization work and muscular endurance. And then as we were able to see more of the girls hands-on and educate them about some higher level movements, we incorporated those in Train Heroic. So by the time season hit, or spring season, they were developing muscular endurance and strength. They were doing higher intensity conditioning drills. And then we obviously had our break. So now we're trying to get another time in the year to peak, right? No pun intended. So we wanted to peak in February. Well, now that's gone. So we want to peak again when tournament season hits. So we're trying to layer in a combination of aerobic development, and that's the long, slow, easy stuff, and the high intensity stuff to work both of those pieces, and then layer in more and more complex day-to-day strength progressions with some plyometrics to build power so the body's ready to function at a high level. So big picture, that's the strategy right now. Does that answer that question for you?
It does. But what happens? You have done your workout for the day before, and maybe it was shuttle runs, and you wake up and you feel fantastic, and you just want to go out and run as hard as you can for half an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk us through why, if that's a good
Yeah,
idea?
yeah, totally. So it's great that the body feels good and the mind feels good. Um, but the physiology works a certain way, right? And we know how it works. And you know me, most times when we either overtrain or undertrain, it's because our mind gets in the way of what our body should be doing that day. And there are days that should be easy, active recovery workouts because we've got something more intense coming up in the weekly schedule. And we need to hit that aerobic component so we can kill two birds with one stone. So an easy day, an easy jog around the neighborhood, again, 20, 30-minute jog, is accomplishing two things. One, it's not beating up the body like an additional shuttle day or an additional interval day. But two, it's building that aerobic base. So if we miss that day because we think it's too easy and it's not worth doing and there's no benefit, that's 100% inaccurate. There's a huge benefit. It's just another component of fitness and one that's critical to women's lacrosse. So we need to try to follow the variations in intensity from day to day and week to week in order to really get the benefit of the entire program. And the body of work is looked at in a week and in a month. It's not looked at in one day. Like, oh, I ran a great shuttle day today, and then I have 2 days off. Or I do 3 hard days back to back to back. I overtrain. Now my shin hurts, and then I'm going to have 5 days off. Or I can't do next week workout, which is more mileage because I'm dinged up from last week because I overdid it. So the progressions and the numbers behind it are critical.
So, how does a player that, say, loves to ride their bike around the neighborhood or do a Pilates class online or yoga, how do they fit that into your training protocol?
So that's additional work, and I like it. There's nothing wrong with it. I wish everybody, all of our clients, all of our athletes took Pilates. It is just a phenomenal mode that teaches core stabilization and awareness, so we can apply that to everything that we're programming. But it's additional. So knock out your train heroic, strength workout, stabilization, core work, and all that. And then if you're doing Pilates, use that as a mode on a day off. That's not going to have a huge impact on the next day as far as any adverse effects. So it's a great day to throw in the mix. A bike ride around the neighborhood, cross training. So we don't get carryover 100% from biking, or let's say it's a rowing or paddleboarding or anything else. We don't get crossover directly to running. That's 100%. So if we're out for a bike instead of a run, and the run was an easy run, we'll try to mimic that same intensity on the bike. If it should be a run at conversation pace and that's getting you to sweat, but you can still talk, mimic that on the bike. Don't go half of that intensity. And if we're doing a 30-minute run and you're substituting a bike, then that bike should really be 40 minutes because your crossover is going to be about 75% from a bike. Okay. If it's an intense day and we're skipping it for an orthopedic reason, I think that's a good idea and I fully support that. Great to cross train rather than just hang it up because you can keep most of your fitness. Try to mimic that intense protocol. So if it's quarter-mile intervals running and you can't do that because you have a foot pain or knee pain or whatever it is, then mimic that same duration of interval. So if that quarter mile takes you 1:30 to 2 minutes, then go hammer those on your bike for 1:30 to 2 minutes at the same output, same effort. And maybe add 1 or 2 more because it's not going to have the downside of the orthopedic impact. For an easy bike ride with your friends around the neighborhood, just doing something to get outside, enjoy the weather, you're tired of school inside, then just add that on. That's additional aerobic work. No negative impact there. There's no pounding, no repetitive impact on the foot, on the knees, on the shins. That's extra credit, and that's fine, but it can't substitute the program that we already have established.
So, what would you say for the player that is maybe struggling right now, maybe to even finish the 2 mile time trial or get the 20 minutes running without stopping to walk?
Okay.
Where are they? What would you say for those players?
Yeah, great question. So if somebody's struggling to get the duration done, get the duration, but lower the intensity. So a run walk protocol would be great. Like if there's no orthopedic concern, it's just fitness level. So if you've got a 20-minute run or 2 mile or whatever's programmed, run 3 minutes, walk 30 seconds. Run 3 minutes, walk 30 seconds, right? Or if you need to start lower than that, run 2 minutes, walk 1 minute, and build up your time. And try to get yourself to where you're doing 20 minutes of running with intermittent rest periods. And then once you do that, then you take away that rest period or cut it down, add more running, and after several weeks, you should be there. You should be able to hit that duration. For somebody that does have an orthopedic concern, and they're having pain doing their 2 mile time trial, then don't do it. Modify with a crossover, a cross training exercise or mode like biking. But again, you've got to hit the same intensity, and then you have to increase that duration in order to get the same benefit. And we're never going to get 100%, right? Lacrosse is a game on your feet, but you can keep and build a ton of fitness on the bike or whatever other mode it is, elliptical or whatever you have access to. So get it in. Feel free to add extra. I'd be doing if I was out orthopedically. If there are 2 conditioning days on Train Heroic, knock out 4 if it's on the bike. Right, it's not going to hurt your foot, it's not going to hurt your shin, not going to hurt your knee or whatever you have going on, and just add that up to try to play catch up a little bit.
So when you say intensity on the bike, you mean getting your heart rate up, making it more
Mm-hmm.
difficult. Does that mean hills? Like how else can you get that intensity that would mimic a run?
Yeah, great call. So hills are phenomenal, and speed. I mean, those are your 2 ways. If you're on a bike outside, if you're in an indoor bike trainer or a Peloton, we can play with cadence intervals, we can play with resistance intervals and so on and dial into all those metrics. And either direction is fine. If you're going to do a bike as your primary mode, and again, you can't run for an orthopedic concern, vary it. So hill repeats on a bike, 30 seconds to a minute, build them up to 2 minutes, crank high resistance and slog through that. Huge benefit from that. If we go the other way, moderate resistance, fast cadence up in the 95 range and pedal fast, we're going to get a high heart rate effort from that too. And just modify that, like perceived exertion is what we call it. So if you're doing a quarter-mile repeat or you're doing a 300-yard shuttle, we all know what that feels like. That's out of breath. That's gassed. At the end of it, you've got your hands on your knees. Try to make yourself feel the same way on the bike. So crank the resistance and crank the cadence to get that feedback. If it's a 3-minute segment at a tempo pace running where it's like a 7 out of 10 or 8 out of 10 effort, well, then try to mimic that on the bike. Same deal, right? You're tired. It's comfortably hard. You can do another. You could last longer if you had to. Mimic that same protocol. Okay. If you're riding around the neighborhood with your friends, not really paying attention to what you're doing with your workout, we're not meeting the expectation of that day. So that would be add-on time. That would not be a replacement.
Got it. So some of the kids are starting to have, little ouchies here and there, maybe their
Mm-hmm.
foot, their shins. I
Mm-hmm.
feel as if maybe there's a perception that they can't tell anybody that they're in pain.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you say to the athletes about what happens when they start to feel pain and how to prevent it in the first place?
Got it. So that comes back to the corrective exercise piece. So every exercise back from where we started 6 months ago, for balance, for mobility, should be reinforced and should be done instead of only one on the program. It should be done a couple times a day. So if they're having shin discomfort, maybe some calf pain, some foot ankle pain, and they've just picked up their running lately and they weren't doing it before, and they've been motivated by our new tech access, it's a great thing, but we want to make sure that they're doing their calf stretch. That's a huge one. We've got our video demo on there. So we need it with our arch up high, heel down on the ground, outside of the foot, straight forward and leaning in. Has to be detail oriented, and it has to be a minimum 45-second hold. So that multiple times per day is going to help get the ankle mobility we need to run. The balance progressions that we've done from just single leg stand or a tandem stance, that's on Train Heroic, if you scroll back far enough, into your higher level balance exercises now, those are critical. So have to get those in on a daily basis. Paying attention to your foot posture throughout the day. So if you're just standing, walking around, and you're in flip-flops all day now because you're not in school or you're in bare feet, focus on those tripods. Get those arches up underneath the midfoot. Have that awareness. Start working on that and paying more attention. And then the other big piece is footwear. As field athletes, a lot of times you're either in your cleats or you're in, some other like cross training shoe. You're not in a running shoe. So if running is the mode you're doing now on a different surface, on pavement or on the track, we need a shoe that's going to, fit your foot, fit your needs. So if we're running in a cross trainer that has no support, really flat, hard outer sole, or let's say the opposite end of the spectrum, like something that maybe looks cool but isn't really used for a functional running shoe, so like a Nike Free, our foot is all over the place in that shoe, right? We can fold it up and put it in our pocket. So it offers no stability. If we don't have stability inside of our shoe because we don't have the foot awareness, which most people this age don't, you really set yourself up for a risk of injury. So go check out a running shoe store, put a little plug in for Charm City. They do a great job. Get something that works for your feet. Get an insert if you need it, if it's recommended. Feel free to reach out. We can help with some more foot and ankle issues and program those in as well.
Yeah, so my thought on that was, how do you know the correct shoes for you?
Hmm.
I do know, little plug for Charm City Run over in Annapolis. I looked at their website, and you can call them and they'll do a virtual check of your foot, your gait, and help you select the right shoe.
Hmm. You
I
got it.
know my running shoes, when I come in the door, I take them off and put them away. I don't use them for anything but running. Do you do that as well?
Yeah, totally. So, I had a orthopedic issue for the fall and until January, and my running shoes collected dust. So they're used for one reason only, and that's straight line running. And if you're not using them for that, you're just wearing them out quicker. And shoes have a finite amount of time or shelf life, and once you exceed that, they're not going to help you out anymore. So save those things for running in a straight line. Use your Nike Frees for walking around the house and playing with your friends in the backyard. Use your cleats when you do your shuttle runs and your agility work, and make sure you're taking care of your body and take care of your feet.
So you touched on long, slow distance. How does that factor into the program that you have outlined on the Train Heroic?
Yeah, so the long slow distance we built early, right? That's a piece that should be done in the early off season. So, in a perfect world, from a physiology perspective, and we don't do this because most people wouldn't follow a program that's this boring, but you spend 4 to 5 months building up your aerobic base, and you just add more and more volume, and you sprinkle in a little bit of intensity. And then by the time you get there, then when you do all your shuttles and your interval training, you've got this really big engine that can just go all day. And instead of tapping out at 2 miles hard or 5 quarter-mile repeats, you can run 10 and 12. You can run 15 and you're fine because you recover in between. So that aerobic base helps your potential with the high level performing, high level intensity exercises and conditioning sessions later on. So if it wasn't followed and built early, right, for those people that didn't do it, then that should be the focus now. So if somebody's doing a shuttle run, a sprint repeat workout or intervals, and they're falling apart and they can't make it through the whole thing and they're gassed on the first or second, then I'm fine with replacing that with another 20 to 30 minute easy run with the goal of building up the total mileage in the week and total aerobic time in the week and in the month. Okay. And the big thing with that is 10% rule. So if you do, 10 miles one week, and that's probably a big number for most of these athletes, but if you do 10 miles one week, then the next, it's a 10-mile increase. Oh, I'm sorry, a 10% increase. All right. You probably get away with another 2 miles. So maybe 12 miles the next week. It's not, oh, I ran 5. Now I'm going to run 15 because Ryan just told me I need to run more. That's when you're setting yourself up for injury. But that aerobic base piece needs to continue. Those easy workouts or recovery workouts are a critical part. They never go away completely. They just scale down in their volume as you get closer and closer to your in-season or preseason time. The off-season is when you do the bulk of that stuff.
So now at present, it looks like July 11th
Hmm.
is the date where
Hmm.
teams will take the field.
Yeah.
Assuming that happens, how do we fit into your training protocol now? How
Hmm.
do we best prepare for that?
So take that July 11th, right, and make that February 15th or March 1, right, and just kind of push the whole thing back so we can compare it to spring season. So if we're at, let's say March 1 for July 11, we basically have 2.5 months to get there, right? So we're like mid-December right now in training phase for a spring sport. So by the time you hit mid-December, you're now tuning up with intensity. So we're getting into more complex strength exercises, making sure you're pushing your intensity on those with quality and with the components that we've already built in. So we hammer those though. We're trying to get better every day instead of just checking boxes. Okay, so on your squats, on your lunge patterns, on your push-ups, if you're not challenged by those, go pick up a $9 resistance band, right? I'll show you. So grab one of these guys online, right? I use them for my own workouts right now. I don't have any dumbbells or heavy weights here, and you can get a ton done with those. If you go to our website, we just put hyperlinks on there, so it's easy to navigate some sites to pick them up. That can progress your intensity, and it's going to mimic what weights would do when you're this close to the season. And then from the running perspective and conditioning perspective, again, it's time for intensity. Now, if you're not ready for it and you haven't done your aerobic base piece, you can't skip that step. So you still need to get your easy stuff in and build the volume, and maybe you do one intense workout in the week instead of two. But for everybody else, the frequency of the intensity is coming up. And that's going to just ramp up over the course of the next 2.5 months. And then, obviously from the skill perspective, I know you can speak on that way more than I can, but it's time to fine tune that. I mean, if a stick is not in your hand and you're not, sharp by the time you hit the beginning of summer, you're playing catch up. You can't get ready for a sport in 4 weeks. It takes months and months. And hopefully most of our kids have been on the right track. And for those that haven't, you got some time to catch up, but you got to get on it now. And those that have, keep pushing. It's time to really get after it now and peak at the right time.
So my last question is not really a question, more of a just listening to the athletes.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them are feeling pressured to do workouts with their high school coaches for their fall sport.
Mm-hmm.
How can they juggle all of it
Mm-hmm.
and stay
So
healthy?
yeah, no, great question. So you look at what does the workout consist of? Are they going to the field and doing a footwork agility, change of direction workout? If so, that's great. That can replace something that we do, or that can be an add-on, because we're not doing a ton of those progressions because we can't really program those without being in front of the girls right now. So if you're getting footwork agility, change of direction stuff in, great, add it in. That's awesome. Fully support it. If you're getting a resistance training workout, and it's maybe made up of a bunch of things that are easy to implement in this setting, like it's a YouTube workout that somebody sent you, a coach or whatever, other kids on the team, and it's a bunch of movements and you can't define why you're doing them, you shouldn't be doing it. So if it's, we're going to do 100 burpees today and we're going to go jump over this stuff and crawl around like an animal on the ground, we see all those workouts on the internet all the time now. If you can't define how that helps you play lacrosse, cross it off, kindly deny that, and do your train heroic workout, something that's going to be more specific for you. If it's a conditioning workout and it is similar in the component to something that we offer, and you're doing it, again, something that's been sent to you and it's maybe a sprint ladder or it's a shuttle workout, then replace one of ours or do one of the other. Don't do both. All right, so we can't just double our workload. Just look at what's similar, follow the one that is more appropriate for your fitness level right now. So if it's a huge long workout and you can't handle that, then do ours or do one from us maybe 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago if you're just catching on. But don't double up. You're going to run into overuse issues.
Okay, I lied. I have one more thing.
Yeah, fire away.
So a lot of the ladies are really killing it, and they are following the program and they
Mm-hmm.
just want a little bit more.
Okay.
What should they do?
So the more needs to be defined. So what is the more? Is it resistance training? Is it conditioning? Is it skill work? Is it speed and agility? What is that more? So we can offer more frequency on certain things. But if you're hitting from the conditioning perspective, 2 intense workouts a week, right? From like a shuttle run day and a sprint day, or an interval day and a shuttle run day, then add 2 more days of your aerobic piece, right? So go do your run at conversation pace or slightly faster, right? You can say a sentence or two, take a breath, sentence or two, okay? So you can get a good sweat in, but it should feel like a 5 or 6 on a scale of 1 to 10, no harder. Crank those out and start building the volume up a little bit with those slowly, all right? So if 3 miles is easy, go crank 4, all right? The next week, go do 5. The next week, go do 6. Okay, by the time we hit there, it's going to be June. Then we can add in some intensity on that third day. So 4 days a week of conditioning total. Just make sure we've got the 2 intensity and the 2 like base building days would be great. 3 days a week, kind of max on your resistance training if you're going hard, right? So that's the key. If you just go through the motions, you're not getting anything out of it. But if you're pushing and you're finding a way to make exercises tougher, again, resistance bands, man, it can be, jugs of water you can hold in your hands doing your back lunges. That's going to be more effective. So crank it to the point where you're fatigued, but you're able to keep form, and you can get a lot out of that. So you can find ways around the house. I'm happy to give some demos on that stuff as well if people are asking for it.
So if there's a confusion, it's okay for them to communicate through the Train Heroic app with you?
Please do. Yeah, we beg for that. Yeah, use the message feature. Message us so we can get feedback to know either, what questions you have about what's up there, or if you want some add-ons, we'd be happy to provide some stuff. If you don't understand anything or you feel like you can't catch up and you're behind, shoot us a message. It just goes to us. It doesn't go to everybody. And we can, communicate with you individually to just give you some direction, kind of tell you where to start or how to pick up. Yeah, we would love that. More communication is going to allow us to give a better service.
Yeah, and this came up in the last one. I think sometimes we forget to click on Train Heroic. It'll say set A, B, or C,
Hmm.
and you have to click on that circle B for it to
Hmm.
give you more information. Because sometimes it's
Correct.
confusing, but you explain it later in the app, and
Yep.
I forget to click on it. So.
Yeah, yep, yeah. Just make sure every set's filled out, boxes are checked there, and then if you're doing the Train Heroic workouts, make sure you log them so we know how many people are doing these. Some workouts we see, a great number, and others we're not seeing much. And if that's because we're not doing it, then we need to make sure we just get those days in, and you don't let emotion make the decision for you. It's a physiological box to check. You have to get them done. It's on the program, just like practices you go to you don't always like, but they're there for a reason. And if you're just not checking the box, make sure you check those boxes, even if they're easy recovery days. We want to know who's getting that done as well.
Well, I know I really appreciate this. Having a personal trainer during a quarantine is a great luxury. So we really appreciate having you in our corner.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you guys having me on today, and appreciate you having us and Coach Tommy as well provide support on Train Heroic. And let's just keep moving forward and get these girls ready for July 11th.
Sounds good. Thanks, Ryan.
Cool.